There's something eerie about a dog that refuses to let you enter your own home, especially when that dog is your partner, your protector, your best friend. Officer Riley James had trusted Titan with her life through narcotics raids, car chases, and missing persons cases. But on that warm Tuesday afternoon, the German Shepherd stood stiffly on her front porch like a living barricade, blocking her way with a low, guttural growl she'd never heard before. It wasn't a bark. It wasn't fear. It was a warning. And Riley, 5 months pregnant and exhausted from a long shift, froze in her tracks. Something wasn't right. Something was deeply wrong. The afternoon had started normally enough. Riley had finished up paperwork at the station and waved goodbye to her fellow officers with that subtle smile of relief only a pregnant woman nearing the end of her second trimester could understand. Her feet were swollen. Her back hurt. All she wanted was a long shower, one of those triple-decker grilled cheese sandwiches her cravings kept demanding, and maybe a nap in front of her favorite crime show rerun. Titan had been dropped off earlier from a training session and was waiting at home, supposedly resting. But instead, he was now stationed directly in front of her front door. Ears pinned back, tail rigid, eyes locked on her with a strange intensity that sent a ripple of unease through her spine. She blinked. "Titan? What's the matter, boy?" she asked gently, reaching for the doorknob with her left hand while balancing her work bag with the other. He moved. Not a lot, just a shift of weight and a single step forward. But it was enough. His body blocked hers. Another growl, louder this time. This wasn't playful. This wasn't even defensive. This was something else. She took a step back and stared at him. "Okay, you want to play guard dog now?" she muttered, trying to calm herself. "Come on, buddy, let me in." He didn't budge. For a second, Riley chuckled nervously. Hormones, maybe. Her nerves had been a mess lately, and her senses overreacted to everything from burnt toast to car alarms. She crouched slightly, wincing at the tightness in her lower back. Titan didn't respond to her tone or body language. No tail wag. No tilt of the head. His eyes remained locked on her. And then something subtle. A smell. Not strong. Just a faint tickle in the back of her nose. Metallic, sweet, familiar, but off. She rubbed her nose and looked toward the side of the house, trying to shake the feeling. She lived in a quiet neighborhood in upstate New York. There weren't factories or landfills nearby. No recent roadwork. So what the hell was that smell? That's when Titan growled again, louder, snapping her out of her thoughts. Riley reached into her jacket and pulled out her phone. If this was just her dog being weird, fine. But if there was something in that house, God forbid a break-in or a gas leak, she wasn't taking chances. She dialed her friend Casey, a lieutenant at the local fire department. "Yo," Casey answered, her voice half distracted. "You nearby?" Riley asked. "Ish, why?" "My dog's losing his mind in front of my door, blocking me from going in. And I swear to God, Case, I think I smell gas." There was silence on the other end. "You're not inside, right?" "Nope." "Stay right there, I'll swing by." Click. Riley sat down on the front step just a few feet from Titan. Her stomach tightened, the baby giving a small kick, as if sharing her tension. She looked at her partner again. "You knew, didn't you?" she whispered. He didn't move, just watched her. Silent, alert, like a soldier standing guard. A few minutes passed. The wind picked up. Birds chirped. A squirrel darted across the yard, and Titan didn't even flinch. That, more than anything, rattled her. He always chased squirrels. She shifted her weight, adjusting her gear belt around her belly, and thought, maybe I'm losing it. Maybe I'm just tired. But deep down, she knew better. Quick reminder, if stories like this move you, inspire you, or make you appreciate the silent heroes among us, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Heroes for Animals. We bring you true, powerful, emotional tales of animal bravery every week. 10 minutes later, Casey pulled up in a red fire department SUV, hopped out with a portable gas sensor, and walked over casually. "Okay, let's see what the big guy is so worried about," she said, crouching near the porch. Titan immediately shifted toward her but didn't growl, just stared. Casey waved the sensor around the frame of the door. Nothing at first. Then, beep. A light flash, beep, beep, beep. Casey's face turned pale. "Jesus Christ," she whispered. Riley stood. "How bad?" "Bad. Your house is full of it." "Gas?" "Yeah, natural gas. Levels inside are peaking red. If you'd walked in and flipped a light switch or even pulled out your phone in the wrong spots." She didn't finish the sentence. Riley grabbed the porch railing to steady herself. Titan sat down, still between them and the door. The fire team arrived within minutes. They shut off the main gas line. A technician crawled under the house, then into the crawl space behind the kitchen. Faulty line. A slow leak behind the stove, probably building up since that morning. "Lucky," one of them said. But Riley knew better. It wasn't luck. It was Titan. That night, after the fire trucks left and the air cleared, Riley sat on her back patio, still shaken. Titan lay by her feet, chewing quietly on the toy Casey had brought him as a thank you. She looked at him with new eyes, not just as a partner or a pet, but as a protector. A silent sentinel who'd risked everything just by doing what he was born to do. "Good boy," she whispered, tears prickling her eyes. He thumped his tail once and leaned into her leg. She didn't tell anyone right away how close it had been. That could come later. For now, she just wanted to breathe, to be alive, to feel her baby kick again, and to thank the dog who wouldn't let her die. Officer Riley James didn't sleep much that night. The house had aired out. The gas line had been replaced. The fire chief gave her the green light to return inside after triple-checking every corner, vent, and appliance. Still, something didn't sit right. She had almost died. Her baby had almost died. And the only reason they were both alive was lying peacefully at the foot of her bed. His thick black fur rising and falling in quiet rhythm, completely unaware of the weight he now carried in her heart. Titan, her canine partner, had sensed something she couldn't. He'd smelled death, and he'd stopped her from walking straight into it. Around 4 a.m., Riley got out of bed and went into the kitchen. The silence in the house was heavier than usual, like the walls remembered what almost happened. She leaned against the counter, one hand resting instinctively on her belly. There were no alarms, no sirens, just the quiet hum of the fridge and the low creak of wood as the house settled. How long had it been leaking? She opened a drawer and pulled out a notepad she kept near the fridge. Originally meant for grocery lists and reminders. Now she scribbled a date. Tuesday. Titan saved our lives. She stared at the words for a moment, then underlined Titan. The next day she called out sick. No one questioned her. Her captain had already heard the story, though she'd kept it vague. "Just a gas leak. Dog picked up on it. We're okay now." She left out the part about nearly opening a door that would have turned her and her unborn child into charred statistics. She didn't mention how her knees had buckled when the gas detector screeched red, or how she'd stared at her house as if it had betrayed her. Instead, she just told the truth, but not all of it, because there was something more that kept gnawing at her. Why hadn't she smelled it sooner? Later that afternoon, Riley took Titan for a drive. Not to the dog park, not to training. Just a drive. Windows down, sun out. His head out the passenger side, ears flapping like flags in the wind. They ended up at Ashwood Acres, a wide grassy field at the edge of town where they used to do canine tracking drills. It wasn't official anymore, but no one minded if she used it. She tossed a ball. Titan fetched it half-heartedly. He wasn't in play mode. Neither was she. She sat on the tailgate of her SUV, watching him sniff the perimeter like he was on duty. Always on duty. Even now. "Why didn't I listen to you right away, huh?" she said aloud, more to herself than to him. He paused, looked back at her with those intelligent eyes, then trotted over and sat at her feet. "You ever get that feeling," she said, rubbing between his ears, "that something's not done? Like there's still something missing?" He blinked, unmoved. "You knew something was off. You didn't just smell gas. You knew I wasn't safe." She stopped. Her stomach flipped, not from the baby, but from a memory. 2 nights ago, she'd cooked pasta. Stove worked fine. No smell, no noise, no pressure issues. Yesterday morning, she hadn't used the stove at all. So when did the gas leak start? The fire crew said it had likely been leaking for several hours, but that didn't add up. Not if everything was normal on Monday night. The technician even said the line looked tampered with, like it had been twisted or pulled, not just eroded naturally. But nobody else had access to her house, except maybe someone had. She shivered. Back at home, she pulled out her old work tablet and sat down at the dining table. Titan flopped beside her with a sigh. She logged into her smart home app. Normally, she used it to adjust the thermostat or turn on lights when she got home late. But it also tracked activity, door sensors, motion triggers, thermostat changes. She tapped through the history. Monday night, kitchen light on at 7:14 p.m. Off at 9:01 p.m. Normal. Tuesday morning, no entries until 11:38 a.m. Back door opened. She stared. She hadn't come home until after 5 p.m. She scrolled further. 11:38 a.m. Back door opens. 11:39 a.m. Kitchen motion sensor activated. 11:47 a.m. Back door closes. That was 8 minutes. 8 minutes inside her home by someone who wasn't her. Her heart rate surged. She reread the log again. Then again, that same metallic smell floated back to her memory. Her chest tightened. Riley grabbed her phone and called dispatch. "Hey, it's James. Quick question. Has anyone reported suspicious activity near East Magnolia in the last couple days?" The voice on the other end was casual. "Nothing recent. Why?" "I think someone may have entered my house yesterday while I was gone." A pause. "You need a unit sent out?" She hesitated. "No, I'll handle it." She went outside and checked the back gate. It was latched, but the lock was loose. Not broken, but rattling, like someone had jimmied it just enough to squeeze through. She turned to Titan, who was already watching her like he knew what she was thinking. "You knew," she whispered. Then she crouched down, looked him square in the eye. "You didn't just smell gas, you smelled him." Titan licked her hand once and looked toward the back of the yard. That evening, she went through the house slowly, room by room, with a flashlight, even though the lights worked fine. She was looking for anything that felt off. In the laundry room, something caught her eye. The small cabinet near the water heater was slightly ajar. She hadn't opened it in weeks. She stepped closer and gently pulled it open. Behind a row of cleaning supplies, she found a plastic lighter, like the kind used for candles. She hadn't bought a lighter in over a year. She picked it up with a tissue, heart hammering in her chest. Titan growled softly behind her. She turned. His ears were up, eyes fixed on the front door now. A second later, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Blocked. She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Whoever had entered her house didn't just twist a gas line and leave it to fate. They left the lighter. They wanted her to come home, open the door, flick a light. Boom! It wasn't just a freak accident. This was a warning. Or worse, a hit. But they hadn't counted on Titan. Riley didn't sleep much that night either. She stayed in the living room, Titan curled at her side, one hand resting on his back, the other around her baby bump. She wasn't scared, not exactly. She was angry. Someone had crossed a line, and the only reason she and her child were still breathing was a dog who couldn't speak, but who knew exactly what to say. He just didn't use words. Riley James had made arrests that ended in tears, riots, and federal trials. She'd seen meth labs in basements with children's toys sitting next to propane tanks, chased armed felons through back alleys, and sat across from cold-blooded killers who smiled when they confessed. But this was different. This was home. And whoever had left that lighter behind, hidden behind Clorox wipes and an old rag in her laundry cabinet, knew her, knew her routine, knew exactly what they were doing. She sat at the dining table that morning, her coffee going cold. Titan lay on the floor, head on his paws, eyes never far from hers. Her other hand rested on her belly, tracing slow circles around the place her baby kicked just hours earlier. Someone had broken in. Someone had tried to kill her and her unborn child. And the only question now was, who? She didn't go back to work that day. Or the next. Her captain told her to take the week. She told him she just needed some space. In truth, she needed time to think, to dig. She started with the security logs. The smart home app only told part of the story. The back door had been opened for exactly 8 minutes, midday, when she was at the precinct. Not long enough to ransack anything. No drawers were open, nothing was stolen. But something had been planted. A gas leak. A lighter. Left in the open. Hidden just enough to be overlooked, but not missed forever. She reached out to a contact. Detective Mark Lively, an old academy friend now working violent crimes in Albany. They used to joke they'd end up solving murders together. She never thought it might start with her own. "Gas line sabotage? You're serious?" Mark asked over the phone that afternoon, voice rough from years of late nights and bad coffee. "As a heart attack," Riley said. The technician said it was twisted hard, not worn out. There was a lighter stuffed behind the cabinet next to it. "I don't smoke. I haven't used that cabinet in months." "Who else has access?" "No one. My ex moved out 2 years ago. My parents live 3 states over. The dog walker retired in February. I live alone. Well, except for Titan." There was a pause. Then, "You think this was targeted?" "I know it was." She wasn't the paranoid type. That had always been her edge on the force. Calm, logical, by the book. But her gut didn't lie. And Titan sure as hell hadn't either. So she pulled out her old notebooks. Years of case files she kept printed or backed up in binders. The kind of analog archive cops her age rarely kept anymore. She flipped through assault reports, restraining orders, parole letters. Who had a reason to hurt her? At first, nothing stood out. Then, she came across a name she hadn't thought about in nearly 2 years. Jameson Delco, small-time arsonist. Charged with attempted manslaughter after lighting a garage on fire with his sister's boyfriend still inside. Riley had been the arresting officer. It was her K-9 unit that cornered him in a storm drain. Delco had screamed he'd get her back for ruining his life. He was denied bail twice, eventually pled down to 3 years in a state facility. She opened her laptop and pulled up the dock inmate locator, released on parole. 2 weeks ago, her stomach dropped. She called Mark again. "Jameson Delco, out on parole. You sure it's him?" "No, but he has motive, and he knows what he's doing with gas lines." Mark promised to pull recent addresses and parole check-ins. Meanwhile, Riley went out back with Titan and sat on the porch, staring out at the woods behind her yard. She hated how jumpy she felt now. Every bird flutter made her twitch. Every creak of a tree branch sounded like a footstep. Titan didn't help. His ears stayed perked, eyes sweeping the tree line like he was waiting for something. She found herself whispering, "If I can't keep this baby safe in my own home, what kind of mother am I going to be?" Titan walked over and rested his massive head on her thigh. She smiled despite herself. "You're the only reason I'm still here, buddy." The next day, a knock at the door made her heart stop. She checked the camera. It was Mark. Riley opened the door, hand still near her holstered weapon. "What did you find?" Mark stepped in, holding a folder. Delco's charge parole officer logged his last address in Syracuse. He never showed up to the last 2 meetings. He's missing. "Damn it!" "That's not all," Mark added, lowering his voice. "Someone broke into a vacant rental 2 blocks from here. Landlord reported it this morning. Back door kicked in. Utility lines tampered with. No sign of squatting, but maybe it wasn't random," Riley finished for him. Mark nodded. They think it was a failed attempt to siphon gas lines. Whoever it was knew what they were doing. But the leak didn't hold. She stared at the folder in his hands. You think he was practicing? I think he was planning. They filed a formal report. Mark reached out to the task force for surveillance support. But without an address or eyewitnesses, there was little to go on. Riley didn't wait. She started canvassing the area herself. Slow drives around the neighborhood, paying attention to abandoned buildings, parked vans, anything out of place. She wasn't technically on duty, but the badge didn't leave her bones just because she was off the clock. Titan came with her, always alert. On the third day, something caught her attention. A rusty blue pickup truck parked just off the side of a maintenance road behind a row of vacant lots. She slowed. No plates. She parked a block away and walked back with Titan leashed tight, staying close to the tree line. The truck was empty, but inside, on the floor of the passenger seat, was a black duffel bag. Open. She crouched behind a dumpster, pulled out her phone, and zoomed in on the bag. Inside, tools, wrenches, gloves, a coiled hose, and a long, thin metal rod, the kind used to adjust gas valves. Titan growled softly. Then she heard the crack of a twig behind her. She turned fast, but no one was there. Still, every hair on her neck stood up. Riley backed away slowly and returned to her car. She called it in. Within 20 minutes, a team arrived to sweep the area. The truck was registered to a Shell LLC, typical burner setup. No fingerprints, no DNA, nothing to hold on to. But she didn't need a smoking gun. She already knew who it was. And now Delco knew she was watching. That night, she couldn't bring herself to go back into the house. She stayed at a friend's place across town. A fellow officer with a spare room and 2 pit bulls who barked at anything bigger than a squirrel. Titan slept at the foot of her bed again. Same as always, calm, ready. But for the first time in her career, Riley admitted something to herself. She wasn't just a cop anymore. She was a mother. And whoever was out there, whoever wanted to scare her, silence her, or take her out, was messing with more than just her. They were coming for her family, and she wasn't going to let that slide. Riley James hadn't been back to her house in 3 days. She checked on it twice, once with her partner, another time with a tech from the gas company to inspect for any new tampering. They found nothing. But that didn't mean she was safe. Paranoia is supposed to fade with evidence. But when you're 5 months pregnant and your canine partner blocks you from entering your own home because there's a gas leak set to blow, you stop ignoring your gut. And Riley's gut screamed something wasn't over. By Thursday, she was sleeping less than 3 hours a night. Titan stayed closer than ever. Didn't even wander from her side when she showered. He paced constantly, ears up, eyes scanning every room like the walls were hiding someone. And Riley? She wasn't just watching anymore. She was hunting. That morning, she poured herself a lukewarm cup of coffee from her friend's pot and sat in front of her laptop with a notepad in her lap. She pulled up the map of her neighborhood and began plotting. 2 break-ins, one at her house, one 2 blocks away in an empty rental. Then that truck. No plates. A duffel of tools made for sabotage. No prints, no DNA, no camera footage. But Delco was behind this. She could feel it in her bones. Back in the academy, one of her instructors used to say, "Sometimes what they leave behind is louder than what they take." Well, Delco hadn't taken anything. He'd left death sitting under her stove. He'd left a lighter. And Titan, God bless him, had spoken the only way he knew how. Barking, blocking, refusing to let her walk into the trap. So what now? She had a face, a motive, a vehicle, but no address, no hard evidence. And yet there was one thing no criminal could ever erase: scent. That afternoon, she reached out to K9 officer Manny Torres, her old training buddy from a few counties over. Manny specialized in scent tracking and cadaver dogs, and he'd always been one of the few who believed that sometimes a dog's nose could uncover what surveillance couldn't. "Delco," Manny repeated over speakerphone. Didn't you run him down into a drainage pipe a few years back? That's the one. He hated you, and I remember. Spit at the cruiser window and everything. Well, Riley said, glancing at Titan, I think he's back. You want my help? I want Titan to try something. They met later that day at the field office. Manny brought a scent box, one of those stainless steel rigs used for target scent-eyed. You got anything Delco's touched? Manny asked. Not directly, she said, but I do have the lighter. She passed it to him, wrapped in a Ziploc, the evidence tag still attached. Manny cracked it open carefully. Should be enough. He placed the lighter in one chamber, filled the rest with blanks. Then he brought Titan into the room. Riley stayed quiet. Her heart pounded. Titan sniffed the first chamber. Neutral. The second. Neutral. The third, he froze, then barked once, then again. He pawed the chamber, nose pressed hard against the edge. That's your guy, Manny said. He's locked in. Riley exhaled, almost in disbelief. Titan remembered the scent. Delco had been in her home, and now they had a base profile. All right, she said. Let's put that nose to work. They started the next morning at the lot where they found the blue truck. The PD had already swept it, but it had been impounded and untouched since. Manny got clearance to bring Titan in solo. Riley watched from the edge as Titan leapt out of the back of her SUV, tail rigid, nostrils flaring. She clipped on his work vest, standard issue, olive green with a black patch that read, Do Not Pet. He circled the truck twice, paused, then cut right, toward the woods. No hesitation. Riley followed. The trail was cold, but Titan didn't care. His nose guided them down a shallow hill, past a small stream, and into a dense patch of forest that edged an abandoned warehouse Riley hadn't seen in years. It used to be a fireworks storage site before the company went under. Now it was boarded up and forgotten, at least to everyone else. Titan growled low as they approached. What is it, boy? She whispered. He stared at a broken pane in the corner window, then sat, his signal for alert. Riley pulled her sidearm. She called it in. Within 20 minutes, backup arrived. Officers moved in cautiously, clearing the building section by section. Inside, dusty crates, broken furniture, discarded fast food wrappers. But in one far corner of the warehouse, hidden beneath a tarp, they found something worse. A sleeping bag, a backpack, and a stack of printed photos of Riley leaving her house, walking Titan, pulling into the precinct parking lot, zoomed in, grainy, but unmistakably her. On the back of each photo, handwritten notes in black marker. 5:52 p.m., returns home. Alone, dog always with her, 5 months pregnant. Riley's throat dried. She flipped through them slowly, her hand trembling. This wasn't random. This was premeditated stalking. This was hunting. Manny approached from behind. He was planning something, real, calculated. She nodded. He was waiting for me to get careless. You ever file a restraining order on this guy? No, never got that far. He pled down and disappeared. I thought that was it. Manny lowered his voice. Riley, this wasn't just a gas leak. He wanted to burn your name out of his head, permanently. She closed the folder of photos and looked down at Titan. He stood there, silent and alert, ready to do whatever she asked. We need to find him before he finishes what he started. That evening, she returned to her house. For the first time in days, she stepped onto the porch without hesitation. Titan walked ahead of her, ears still sharp, but no growl in his throat. She entered with her weapon drawn, cleared the house herself. Nothing. She breathed, safe for now. In her bedroom, she pulled open the bottom drawer of her nightstand. Inside was a sealed envelope addressed to Baby James. She had written it on her first day of maternity leave planning. A letter for her child to read someday, just in case anything ever happened. She stared at it now. Nope, she whispered, and tucked it deeper under the stack of books. She didn't need a backup plan anymore. She had Titan, and she wasn't running. Later that night, she poured 2 fingers of ginger ale into a tumbler. No whiskey, not anymore. and sat on the back deck. Titan lay next to her, staring up at the stars. "I don't know how this ends," she said softly. Titan's tail thumped. "But when it does, I'm not going to be the one looking over my shoulder." She smiled faintly. Neither of them noticed the camera flash from across the yard. A tiny click. Another photo. Someone was still watching, and the game wasn't over yet. The camera flash hadn't been loud, barely more than a whisper in the night. But it had been enough. Enough for Titan to lift his head, ears swiveling toward the woods behind the fence. Enough for Riley James to freeze mid-sentence, her fingers tightening around her tumbler of ginger ale, and enough to confirm what she'd already begun to suspect. Delco wasn't gone. He was just waiting, watching, planning. She stood slowly, set her drink down on the patio table, and followed Titan's gaze. There was nothing but shadows, a quiet line of trees, and the soft rustle of wind through leaves. Normal to anyone else, but not to her. Not anymore. She went inside and locked the door, then turned off every light in the house. Titan moved with her, calm but coiled like a spring. He didn't bark, didn't growl, but he was watching the dark too, his every muscle taut. She pulled the curtain back slightly and peered through the window toward the tree line. Nothing, but she could feel it. Someone had been there, and that someone had taken her picture. The next morning, Riley filed a report. A patrol car circled the property 3 times that day. A detective from Violent Crimes came by and dusted the back fence for prints. No luck. "Could have been a hunter, or some bored teenager with a camera," the officer offered. Riley didn't argue, but she didn't believe it either. She knew what a hunter looked like, and Jameson Delco had already marked his prey. She took the next 2 days off work and turned her house into a fortress. Cameras, motion sensors, reinforced locks on every window and door. Even a ring system wired to her phone. She wasn't being paranoid, she was being prepared. More than anything, she needed to protect what mattered most, her baby, and the dog who had already saved them once. That Friday she woke just after 5 a.m. to Titan standing at the foot of the bed, ears pricked, tail stiff. "Something out there?" she whispered, sitting up and grabbing her phone. The ring alert showed motion detected at 5:04 a.m. back fence. She tapped to view the video. Nothing moved on screen, just a slow pan across the backyard. Then, barely visible, a flicker of movement behind the trees. A shadow ducking low. Titan let out a soft whine. She pulled on sweatpants, slid her Glock into her waistband, and clipped on Titan's working vest. This wasn't going to be another night of hiding. She stayed inside until daylight. Then she grabbed a bag of supplies, maps, printed case files, her field notes, and drove out with Titan to the place where this had all started, the warehouse. She needed answers, needed to feel like she was doing something other than waiting to be attacked. Inside the warehouse, the scent of dust and mold greeted her. She moved carefully, Titan ahead of her, guiding. She stopped where they'd found the sleeping bag. It was gone. The tarp was still there. The wrappers. A few scratch marks on the floor from boots. But the bag, the photos, gone. Someone had come back. Riley knelt, brushing dust aside with gloved fingers. A small scrap of paper fluttered out from under a box. She picked it up. "Next time I won't miss." No signature, just black ink in crooked handwriting. Her stomach turned cold. Back at her SUV, she sat in the front seat, staring at the note. This wasn't a message. It was a promise. Delco had been here after they swept it, which meant he was still in the area, taunting her, testing her. She opened her notepad and flipped back through Delco's case file. In the original arrest, Delco had used an old cabin off Route 17 as a hideout. It had been condemned years ago, no running water, no power. But it was off the grid. No neighbors, no prying eyes. She punched the address into her phone and turned the engine over. The road out to the cabin was barely a road at all. More of a dirt trail overgrown with weeds and branches that scraped the SUV's sides. Titan sat quietly in the passenger seat, his gaze fixed ahead, muscles tense. At the half-mile mark, she cut the headlights and drove the last stretch slow. The cabin appeared through the trees like something out of a horror movie. Rotted wood, broken shingles, and one single curtain fluttering in the breeze. Someone was there. She knew it. She parked 50 yards out and approached on foot, weapon drawn, Titan at her side. They circled the back, found an open window, no glass, just a ragged screen flapping. Titan stopped, sniffed, sat down. Alert! She radioed in her position, whispered to dispatch. Possible location on suspect Delco. Unconfirmed visual. Going in. The response came back calm. Backup en route. ETA 20 minutes. She didn't have 20. Inside, the air was stale and hot. It smelled like sweat, metal, and mildew. She moved slow, scanning each room. Titan stayed inches from her knee. In the bedroom, if you could call it that, there was a cot, an old army duffel, and food wrappers scattered on the floor. But what stopped her cold was the wall. It was covered in photos of her again. Snapshots of her walking to her car, standing at her mailbox, at the precinct, holding her stomach. Some were marked with red X's. One had a word written across it in marker. Unfinished. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked. Riley turned hard, weapon raised. Police, show yourself now. No answer, Titan growled. Then, a flash of movement. From the attic crawl space, Riley moved quickly, pointing her weapon toward the ceiling as Titan barked. Fierce and deafening. The attic hatch was open, the ladder lowered. She called again. Jameson Delco, this is Officer Riley James. You come down now, hands up, or I send in my dog. Silence. Then a crash. A figure dropped from the attic, swinging something metallic. Titan launched. Delco hit the ground hard, screaming as Titan latched onto his arm. The pipe in his hand clattered across the floor. Riley moved fast, gun drawn, knees steady. Titan out, she barked. The dog released instantly, pulling back but still growling. Delco groaned, his forearm bleeding. I didn't mean to hurt you, he shouted. You sabotaged my playhouse. I was just trying to scare you. You left a lighter in a room full of gas. His mouth twisted. You ruined my life. I wanted you to know how that felt. Backup arrived minutes later. Delco was cuffed and bleeding, mumbling nonsense about redemption and balance and making things even. Riley watched them haul him off, her hands still trembling. Not from fear, but from rage. Then she looked down at Titan. He stared back at her calmly, and she knew, if he hadn't been there that first night, she'd never have made it this far. That evening, she sat in her backyard again. Same spot, same drink. The breeze was cooler, the air cleaner. Titan lay at her feet, belly full from a well-earned steak. She looked down at him and smiled. You saved us again, boy. He licked her hand and rested his head against her ankle. Across the lawn, a neighbor's porch light flickered on. No shadows, no flash, just peace. For now, 3 weeks later, everything felt quieter. Not silent. Riley James's life would never be silent again. Not with a baby on the way, not after the trauma of being hunted in her own home. But there was a kind of quiet that settles after chaos. When the fear lifts and you start to feel normal again. Normal, of course, was a new concept for Riley now. Because how do you go back to normal after a dog saves your life? Twice. The day after Delco's arrest, the story made the local news. Pregnant officer targeted in home sabotage, saved by K9 partner. The image they used was one she hadn't approved. A candid photo snapped years ago of her kneeling beside Titan during a department demo at a school. Titan's tongue hung out, tail wagging, and Riley had a grin on her face that felt miles away from the woman she'd become since. The station had wanted her to do a press conference. She declined. I'm not the story, she told them. But Titan was. She had his working vest cleaned and framed. It now hung in the entryway of her home, right above the leash hook. The vest still smelled faintly of pine and leather. Riley would pause sometimes just to run her hand over it, as if touching it grounded her to everything they had been through. And even though Titan was technically still certified for active duty, Riley had made a choice. He's done enough, she told her captain. Titan's badge was officially retired the following week. Her colleagues threw a small party in the break room. There were cupcakes, a cake shaped like a dog bone, and a surprise plaque that read, "To Titan, loyalty without question, courage without hesitation." When she brought Titan in, everyone stood and clapped. The old boy wagged his tail like a pro, posed for photos, and somehow still managed to sniff out the donut box under the table. But the real celebration came the next morning, when Riley woke up to bird song and the warm stretch of late summer sunlight across her living room floor. Titan was already there, lying belly up, snoring softly with his paws twitching in some dream. Riley sat on the couch, her hand resting on her belly, feeling the steady kicks inside. The baby was strong, alive, safe. Because of him, there were nightmares, sure. Flashbacks of the gas leak, of the lighter, of the night Delco jumped from the attic. But she worked through them. Therapy helped. So did journaling. And Titan, he was always right there, anchoring her back when her mind began to drift too far. Sometimes she'd wake up in a cold sweat, reaching instinctively toward her holster, only to find a cold nose bumping her wrist. "You're okay," his eyes would say. "I've got you." A few days after Titan's retirement, Riley got a letter in the mail. No return address. The handwriting was messy, but careful. It was from Delco. She almost threw it out, but didn't. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No threats, no apologies. Just one sentence: "You made me feel powerless, and I wanted to make you feel the same." She folded the letter in half and burned it in the kitchen sink. Power wasn't something she chased. It was something she earned, and she had Titan to remind her of that every day. As her due date approached, Riley started nesting. She painted the nursery a soft forest green, hung framed quotes about bravery and kindness, and added little animal decals to the walls: foxes, bears, owls. One afternoon, while rearranging furniture, she found herself staring at the empty space beside the crib. A soft dog bed would go there, right next to the baby, because she knew, when she brought her child home from the hospital, Titan would be there. The community response had been overwhelming. Local kids sent handmade cards. Veterans mailed in challenge coins. A retired officer in Montana even offered to sponsor Titan's food and vet care for life. She politely declined, but wrote a thank you note by hand. The support meant everything. But she never forgot that some people wouldn't understand why she credited a dog for saving her. They didn't get it. But those who did, they really did. One afternoon in late September, Riley sat in a rocking chair on her front porch, a mug of peppermint tea in hand. Titan lay beside her, his muzzle now dusted with a little more gray. They watched the neighborhood kids ride their bikes past. The leaves had just started turning gold at the edges. A woman jogging by slowed at the sidewalk and smiled. "Is that the hero dog?" Riley nodded. "Sure is." "He looks so normal." The woman laughed. Riley smiled back. "Yeah, that's the trick." That night, as she tucked herself into bed, she whispered something into Titan's ear as he curled beside her feet. "I'm not scared anymore." And she wasn't. She still checked the locks, still kept her weapon within reach, still walked the perimeter sometimes before bedtime. But fear no longer sat at her table, because she had already lived through the worst and come out stronger. 1 week later, Riley gave birth to a healthy baby boy, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, full head of dark hair. A scream that filled the entire hospital room. She named him Caleb Ryder James, middle name after Titan's original handler, Ryder Morgan, who died in the line of duty. A silent nod to where their story began. When she brought Caleb home, Titan sniffed him gently, then curled up near the crib like he'd been waiting his whole life to protect something that small. In the months that followed, Riley adjusted to motherhood with the same grit she brought to every case. Sleepless nights, endless diapers, emotions she didn't always recognize. But through it all, Titan stayed. He watched over Caleb like a sentinel. When the baby cried, Titan would stand guard. When Riley rocked her son in the middle of the night, Titan was at her feet, silent and steady. He didn't need a badge anymore. He had a new purpose now. One night, as she sat with Caleb sleeping on her chest, she whispered to Titan, "You saved both of us. I hope you know that." Titan blinked slowly, his breathing calm. He knew. Thank you so much for following this story from beginning to end. From a growl on the porch to a chase through the woods, from fear and doubt to love and healing, this story was never just about danger. It was about instinct, loyalty, and the kind of bond that doesn't need words to be understood. Before you go, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had an animal protect you when you least expected it? What would you do if your dog tried to stop you from walking into your own house? Would you listen? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more powerful, true stories of bravery, healing, and the incredible animals who change our lives. Until next time, take care of each other and hug your heroes.